Welcome to Forgotten Chronicle HQ. When we think of the Roman Empire, images of powerful legions, marble temples, and gladiator battles often come to mind. But behind the famous stories of Julius Caesar and the Colosseum lies a treasure trove of strange, fascinating, and little-known facts that most history books never mention. From bizarre customs to ingenious inventions, from wild extravagances to remarkable engineering, Rome was a civilization full of surprises. Today, we're diving deep into 101 lesser-known facts about the Roman Empire. Facts that will shock, amaze, and maybe even make you laugh. So grab your toga and let's step back in time to uncover the secrets of Rome. 1. Romans didn't use soap. Instead, they rubbed olive oil over their bodies and scraped it off with a curved tool called a strigil. This removed dirt and sweat, but it left them smelling, well, a little oily. 2. Public toilets were communal. Rows of stone seats were lined up with no partitions, and people sat side by side. Privacy wasn't a priority. Conversation was common while doing your business. 3. Roman concrete outlasted empires. Unlike modern mixers, their volcanic ash-based concrete actually grew stronger over time. That's why aqueducts, harbors, and temples are still standing today. 4. Fast food was everywhere. Rome had thermopolia, small shops serving hot, ready-to-eat meals. The working class often depended on them since few had kitchens at home. 5. Coins doubled as propaganda. Emperors stamped their faces and achievements on coins, spreading their image to every corner of the empire, long before social media. 6. Hair dye was surprisingly popular. Wealthy women used goat fat and ashes to bleach their hair blonde, while others wore elaborate wigs imported from conquered territories. 7. Exotic delicacies were a sign of status. The rich dined on strange foods like peacock brains, flamingo tongues, and stuffed dormice, proving wealth wasn't about taste, it was about spectacle. 8. Windows were rare. Most Roman houses had wooden shutters or thin cloth instead of glass. Only the richest could afford panes of imported glass. 9. Gambling was illegal, but thriving. Romans loved dice games, especially during festivals. Even though it was banned, dice have been found everywhere, from taverns to military camps. 10. Wine was always watered down. Drinking pure wine was considered barbaric. Proper Romans mixed it with water, herbs, or even seawater for flavor. 11. Heated floors kept Romans warm. Wealthy households and bathhouses used a system called hypocausts, where hot air from furnaces circulated under the floors to warm the rooms above. 12. Roads stretched across the empire. The Romans built more than 250,000 miles of roads, connecting Britain to Mesopotamia. Many routes still serve as the foundation for highways in Europe today. 13. The first shopping mall appeared in Rome. Trajan's Market, built around 110 CE, had multiple levels of shops and offices, making it the world's earliest known commercial complex. 14. Aqueducts moved mountains of water. Some aqueducts carried millions of gallons daily, supplying cities, fountains, and bathhouses. Their engineering precision allowed water to travel for miles without pumps. 15. Rome had its own postal service. The cursus publicus delivered official messages and goods quickly across the empire, with fresh horses stationed at relay points for speed. 16. Fire brigades protected the city. Some were state-organized, but others were private, run by wealthy men who sometimes exploited fires for political or financial gain. 17. Romans revolutionized glass. Their glassblowers invented clear glass, which was used in luxury cups, vases, and windows for the wealthiest households. 18. Lead pipes carried water. While innovative, these pipes also released lead into drinking water. Some historians believe this contributed to long-term health problems. 19. Roman surgeons were ahead of their time. They developed scalpels, forceps, and even bone drills, many of which resemble tools used by modern doctors today. 20. Eye surgeries were possible. Cataracts were treated with a procedure called couching, where a needle was used to push the cloudy lens out of sight, restoring partial vision. 21. Soldiers marched incredible distances. A Roman legionary could march up to 20 miles a day while carrying nearly 60 pounds of weapons, armor, and supplies. 22. They built a camp every night. On campaigns, soldiers constructed a small fortified camp complete with ditches and palisades, even if they only stayed for a single night. 23. Pay was tied to salt. Sometimes soldiers received part of their wages in salt, a valuable commodity for food preservation. This is where the word salary originates. 24. Discipline could be brutal. The punishment of decimation meant every 10th man in a disgraced unit was executed, a terrifying way to enforce loyalty. 25. Armor wasn't leather like in movies. The famous lorica segmentata was made of overlapping metal strips that provided both flexibility and strong protection in battle. 26. Training was done with weighted weapons. Soldiers drilled with wooden swords and shields that were twice as heavy as real ones, building stamina and strength for combat. 27. Retirement came with land. Veterans were often granted farmland in conquered provinces, helping to spread Roman culture and loyalty far beyond Italy. 28. Auxiliary troops expanded the army. Non-Roman citizens from conquered lands served in the auxiliaries, gaining Roman citizenship after their service. 29. Naval power was adapted. The Roman Navy outfitted ships with catapults and boarding ramps, allowing them to fight like land soldiers at sea. 30. Battle formations were ingenious. The famous testudo, tortoise formation, had soldiers lock shields together on all sides and above, making them nearly invulnerable to arrows. 31. Romans loved holidays. There were over 150 public festival days each year, filled with games, parades, and religious ceremonies, meaning work often took a back seat. 32. Gladiator fights weren't always deadly. Contrary to Hollywood, most bouts didn't end in death. Gladiators were expensive to train. So many fights ended when one surrendered. 33. Theaters drew huge crowds. Roman theaters could seat tens of thousands, hosting plays, comedies, and political speeches that entertained and influenced the public. 34. Chariot racing topped gladiators in popularity. The Circus Maximus was the largest stadium in Rome, holding over 250,000 spectators who cheered for their favorite racing teams. 35. Purple clothing meant power. Made from thousands of crushed sea snails, Tyrian purple dye was so rare and costly that only emperors and elites could wear it. 36. Bathhouses were community hubs. Public baths weren't just for cleaning. They were social centers with libraries, gardens, gyms, and even snack bars. 37. Board games were popular entertainment. Games like Latruncioli, similar to chess, were played across the empire. Dice games and gambling were also favorite pastimes. 38. Slaves had a path to freedom. Though harshly treated, slaves could sometimes save enough to buy their freedom, or be granted it by their masters. 39. Education was valued. Wealthy families often hired Greek tutors to teach literature, philosophy, and rhetoric, shaping the minds of future politicians and generals. 40. Roman dining was a spectacle. Banquets featured elaborate dishes, music, and entertainment. Reclining on couches while eating was a sign of status and luxury. 41. Caligula's horse was a senator? Sort of. The Emperor Caligula is said to have planned to make his favorite horse, Incitatus, a consul. Historians debate whether it was serious or satire, but it showed his eccentricity. 42. Nero fiddled while Rome burned. Maybe. The famous story of Nero playing music during the Great Fire of Rome is likely propaganda. Still, his indifference to the suffering made him deeply unpopular. 43. Augustus avoided the title emperor. Rome's first emperor preferred to be called princeps, meaning first citizen, to maintain the illusion of our republic while holding absolute power. 44. Claudius expanded the empire into Britain. In 43 CE, he personally oversaw the conquest of Britain, establishing Roman rule that would last for nearly 4 centuries. 45. Commodus fought as a gladiator. The son of Marcus Aurelius regularly entered the arena. Though his opponents were staged to lose, it scandalized Rome that an emperor fought in the sand. 46. Hadrian built a wall across Britain. Stretching 73 miles, Hadrian's Wall marked the northern frontier of Roman Britain and was designed to keep out tribes from modern-day Scotland. 47. Julius Caesar was never emperor. Though often thought of as one, Caesar was declared dictator for life in 44 BCE, but he was assassinated before the title of emperor existed. 48. Tiberius ruled from exile. Later in life, Emperor Tiberius withdrew to the island of Capri, governing Rome remotely while indulging in seclusion and rumor-fueled debauchery. 49. Diocletian split the empire in two. In 285 CE, he divided Rome into eastern and western halves to make governing easier, an act that set the stage for very different futures. 50. Constantine embraced Christianity. After converting, he legalized Christianity in the empire, ending centuries of persecution and laying the groundwork for Europe's future faith. 51. Romans used urine for cleaning. Collected in public jars, urine's ammonia content was used to bleach clothes. Even the emperor taxed it as a resource. 52. Goat's milk was used for teeth whitening. Romans believed rinsing with goat's milk helped keep their teeth bright, though dental hygiene was still pretty rough by modern standards. 53. They flavored frozen treats with fish sauce. Some sources suggest garum, Rome's favorite fermented fish sauce, was occasionally mixed into icy dishes, a taste likely shocking to us today. 54. Gladiator blood was medicine. Doctors prescribed the blood of fallen gladiators as a supposed cure for epilepsy and other ailments, believing it carried the warrior's strength. 55. Sweat was bottled as a beauty aid. Gladiator sweat was scraped off and sold as an aphrodisiac, supposedly increasing fertility or sexual attraction. 56. Phallic charms were everywhere. Romans wore amulets shaped like male genitals to ward off evil spirits and bring good luck, a practice seen in jewelry and even street decorations. 57. The vomitorium wasn't what you think. It wasn't a room for vomiting during feasts. It was the name for the exit passages in amphitheaters that spewed forth crowds. 58. Lead made wine sweeter. Romans sometimes boiled grape juice in lead pots, creating a syrupy sweetener. Unfortunately, it also poisoned them over time. 59. Dogs were once crucified. In a grim tradition, Rome crucified dogs as punishment for failing to warn the city during an enemy attack centuries earlier. 60. Flamingo tongues were a delicacy. Among the elite, these exotic and colorful tongues were considered a luxury food, more for status than for taste. 61. Rome's population peaked at over 1 million. At its height, the city of Rome was the largest in the world, but after the empire's decline, it shrank to just tens of thousands. 62. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 CE. Led by Alaric, the Visigoths stormed the city in a shocking event that marked the beginning of Rome's unraveling. 63. The Western Empire fell in 476 CE. The last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer, often cited as the official end of Rome. 64. The Eastern Empire lasted nearly 1,000 years longer. Known as the Byzantine Empire, it survived until 1453, when Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks. 65. Rome never fully disappeared. Its laws, roads, and institutions continued to influence Europe long after the Western Empire collapsed. 66. Latin lived on through new languages. French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian all evolved directly from Latin, the language of the Romans. 67. Roman roads became medieval highways. Merchants, pilgrims, and armies of the Middle Ages still relied on the routes first paved by Rome centuries earlier. 68. Christianity spread because of Rome. The empire's vast network of roads and cities made it possible for Christian missionaries to travel and spread their faith efficiently. 69. The Roman Senate outlived the empire. Even after emperors fell, the Senate continued in some form, existing into the early Middle Ages as a shadow of its old self. 70. The name Caesar lived on. The title inspired rulers for centuries, transforming into Kaiser in Germany and Tsar in Russia, keeping Rome's legacy alive. 71. Romans lived in apartment buildings called insulae. These multi-story structures housed the urban population, with shops on the ground floor and cramped living spaces above. 72. Fire was a constant danger. With wooden buildings and open flames for cooking, fires frequently swept through Rome, destroying entire neighborhoods. Chapter 73. The Colosseum had a retractable roof. Called a velarium, this massive awning covered the spectators to protect them from the sun and rain. 74. Gladiators endorsed products. Much like modern celebrities, famous gladiators had their images used to sell oils, drinks, and other items. 75. Women could own property and businesses. Despite being patriarchal, Roman law allowed women, especially widows, to run shops, farms, and even lend money. 76. The Roman calendar originally had 10 months. March was the first month, and winter months were unnamed until later reforms added January and February. 77. Julius Caesar introduced leap years. To correct the calendar, He added an extra day every 4 years, creating the Julian calendar, a precursor to our modern system. 78. Emperors were often worshipped as gods. Many rulers were deified after death, and temples were built to honor them alongside traditional Roman gods. 79. Graffiti was everywhere. Ancient Romans left messages, jokes, political opinions, and even insults scratched into walls, essentially the social media of the day. 80. Spiderwebs stopped bleeding. Romans used spiderwebs as a simple, natural bandage to treat wounds, showing early ingenuity in medicine. 81. The handshake was invented in Rome. Romans used it as a gesture of peace, showing that neither person carried a weapon, a practice that survives today. 82. Soldiers wore hobnailed sandals called caligae. These boots provided grip during marches and battles and became iconic symbols of the Roman army. 83. Senators had special footwear. They wore shoes called calci, often dyed red or black, to distinguish their rank in public. 84. Wine was spiced for flavor. Romans added honey, herbs, and even seawater to wine, creating a variety of tastes far different from modern vintages. 85. Owls were considered bad omens. Romans associated owls with death, and sightings often inspired fear or ritual offerings. 86. Roman hours varied by season. The day was divided into 12 daylight hours and 12 night hours, so an hour in summer was longer than an hour in winter. 87. Hannibal almost destroyed Rome. The Carthaginian general famously crossed the Alps with elephants, terrifying the Romans, but was ultimately defeated. 88. The Roman census inspired modern population counts. It wasn't just for taxes. The census helped organize military service and track citizens across the empire. 89. Roman archers influenced global architecture. Their use of arches in bridges, aqueducts, and buildings set the foundation for Western architecture for centuries. 90. Romans invented the bound book, or codex. Moving away from scrolls, the codex allowed pages to be written on both sides and bound together, a precursor to modern books. 91. Soldiers carried small statues of their gods. Many legionaries kept tiny figurines for protection and luck while on campaign. 92. Gladiators trained at specialized schools. Known as ludi, these schools focused on combat skills, diet, and conditioning to produce elite fighters. 93. Some emperors banned kissing during plagues. To prevent disease spread, rulers sometimes imposed temporary restrictions on public displays of affection. 94. Bread dole programs kept citizens fed. The government distributed free or cheap grain to prevent unrest in Rome's massive urban population. 95. Roman mosaics decorated floors and walls. These intricate artworks often told stories, displayed wealth, and decorated public and private spaces. 96. Glass cups were luxury items. While common vessels were made of clay or bronze, only the wealthy could afford finely blown glassware. 97. Romans domesticated rabbits. Originally a delicacy, rabbits were kept as livestock and eventually spread across Europe through Roman influence. 98. The Pantheon Dome is still the largest unreinforced concrete dome. Built nearly 2,000 years ago, it remains an architectural marvel admired worldwide. 99. Senators used wax tablets for writing. These reusable tablets allowed notes, calculations, and messages to be written and erased quickly. 100. Roman engineers built structures that defy time. From aqueducts to the Colosseum and the Pantheon, many Roman buildings still stand today, showing engineering brilliance that modern architects still study. 101. Rome's legacy lives in modern life. From legal systems and languages to road networks and architecture, Rome's influence shapes the world we live in, even 2,000 years later. And there you have it, 101 fascinating and lesser-known facts about the Roman Empire. From soldiers marching incredible distances to emperors with eccentric habits, to engineering feats that still amaze us today, Rome was a civilization of contradictions, brilliant, brutal, and endlessly intriguing. Its legacy lives on in the roads we travel, the languages we speak, the laws we follow, and the buildings that inspire architects even now. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, comment on your favorite fact, and follow Forgotten Chronicle HQ for more epic stories from the past.